Thank you again for joining me at Remote-Backroad-Jungles with a dash in between each word. And please subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed, and like my videos, and please sit back and enjoy. So today we're going to talk about the French catacombs, and it has more than 6 million skeletal remains in the catacombs to this day in Paris, France. Not just France, in Paris, France. The catacombs are what they call underground ossuaries. They're a place to put the remains of someone who has died, and they were built purposely in answer to the overcrowded French cemeteries, but specifically, as I mentioned, in Paris, France. And now France is three-quarters forest, and in 1774 there was a whole bunch of collapses of the walls around the Holy Innocents Cemetery, and this really brought attention to the cemetery conditions. So something had to be done because all the cemeteries were overcrowded. And don't forget, France is predominantly a Catholic country. So around 1788, they would take covered wagons under the cover of night with the remains from many Paris cemeteries, and they would be moved to a mine shaft. This used to be Paris's stone quarries, and it was open to the public in 1874. In 2013, fast forwarding a little bit, these catacombs are just one of 14 museums. These catacombs actually house so many bones that, from what I could gather, it didn't seem like anything was actually labeled anymore. So this is kind of like, it almost seems like a little bit controversial, because I don't know if myself I would like this. If my family's remains were moved, whether there's a crisis, overcrowding or not, or whatever, that they would be moved so much that there's no documentation. And if you can see to this day some of the pictures, and they're stacked up and kind of like nice, but I don't see any names or any ways to identify the people. So, obviously I don't know how people would have taken it at that time period when they lived. Records show the earliest Paris burial grounds were at the left bank of the city, but by the 5th century, the cemeteries moved to the right bank, so they basically always built their cemeteries very close to inhabited areas, and maybe that was the problem. So they wanted to move the cemeteries somehow away from the inhabited areas. The burial ground by Notre Dame Church was the main burial ground at the time. Sometime after 1130, in order to make room for those that had died recently, the ones that had died long ago, they were removing their graves, and they were put inside the roofs and walls of the cemetery walls. So these little ossuaries that they were trying to make, and these it almost formed like a crypt underneath in a mine shaft. So it's a little bit weird. By the 18th century, they made 3 new cemeteries on the outside of city limits and condemned all burials within the city limits. So they started cracking down, and to me it just seems kind of crazy. If you lived during that time, I think this would kind of bother me a little bit, because it seems like there's no, I feel like there's almost no permission from the families, maybe, but this is due to supposed overcrowding of the cemeteries. At the same time, the left bank of Paris is rich in Lutetian limestone, and they mine so frequently there and so deep, and kind of what they called illicit, that they drilled from different angles and everything, but they did it so much that they were just bound to cave in soon, the mine shafts. So they eventually made a special service that specialized in the inspection of these mines. It kind of reminds you of like the coal miners back then, how they had people come in to check if it was safe for the workers to be in there in the first place. So as more and more cave-ins happened because of these abandoned mines, King Louis set up this commission that I just mentioned earlier. And so the prefect of police, Alexander Lenore, wow, that was a tongue twister there. I apologize for any bad pronunciation, supported the idea to move the dead from the graveyards to some of the fixed subterranean passageways around 1782. So they came up with this idea to put these remains of these people from a long time ago. It sounds like they were digging up the long past dead, and they were going to move them to these tunnels that we know today as the catacombs. It became law in 1785, and it took about 2 years working daily. 2 years working daily at night to move all these bodies. They mentioned specifically at night, so I don't know if they only did it at night because of congestion, traffic issues, or would it be extremely upsetting and depressing for people to see this constantly. But the idea to me that they would be doing this for 2 years, that means that there's a tremendous amount of traffic flow of bodies and remains that are being put here. So it's kind of a strange thing, I think. Many victims of the French Revolution were buried in these different tunnels. So these are historic people that survived, or I should say that died during the French Revolution, that make up a huge part of history when you think about it. And they're being moved. They had been for years buried in hallowed ground, consecrated ground. Don't forget, France is predominantly Catholic. So I highly doubt most people were anything other than Catholic. And this goes back all the way to like Marie Antoinette and before. So they also used an old well, and many people's remains were also put there. And the area was made up into a museum-like atmosphere, housing the belongings and the artifacts that were left over from the digs of the bodies. Now, don't forget, I would assume not everybody was put in a coffin, but if they were, there's no, I didn't see in the pictures, I didn't see any coffins. I see the remains. They took the pieces. So this is where you see in the pictures that I was about to speak of, where they said skulls, tibias, femurs that are lining the walls in uniform positions. But it's almost kind of weird because it's like they're not in a casket, and I can't see any way to name these people. So your family doesn't, it seems like they're not named. I'm doing this story and it's interesting to me, but I don't think I'd like this at all. I don't think I'd appreciate this at all. These tunnels were also used by the resistance during World War II for the successful liberation of Paris. So the resistance were in these tunnels, just like they show in the movies, and it was like a maze, a labyrinth of all sorts of tunnels that they helped fight World War II, and they won. Uh, these tunnels were key to the liberation of Paris. In 2004, there was a discovery in the tunnels where someone had installed a homemade movie theater, a bar, a restaurant. They said the police discovered this. How they didn't know this was going on in the first place, I don't know. But who knows if that could be used for good or bad purposes. And also the fact that if these tunnels are still so in use today, when you think about like trafficking, all the things that are happening now and how crazy France is right now at the time, you would think that this is something wild, that there could be so many things, so many purposes that these tunnels could be used for now. And the historic factor is interesting as well, but just a thought. The movie As Above, So Below was filmed in these catacombs, and they have a scene where there was a car and a piano in the catacombs that they set on fire. So they definitely allowed special, special things to happen at the catacombs. I would assume that they were given a monetary amount, obviously, but it's also a very dangerous thing to put fire in the catacombs. So I would be really interested in knowing how they pulled that one off. But I also think it's a little bit like, wow, there's remains in there. It's supposed to be a burial ground. And I almost think it's a little bit disrespectful, but it's just my opinion. In 2015, there was a publicity stunt where there were people offered the chance to spend the night in the catacombs for a large sum of money. I don't think I like that. It seems very, very crunched in there, very claustrophobic. I don't think that would be my cup of tea at all. And why you'd want to spend time among the dead just seems like one of those crazy stunts that somebody would come up with. In August 2017, burglars broke into the catacombs and stole thousands of dollars worth of wine. I have no idea where the wine came from. Perhaps maybe from some of the churchyards where the remains had come from, because these came from various churches. So maybe there was wine down there. I don't know where the idea of wine came from, but that was one of the things that it said, that burglars actually got in, there was wine down there, and then they stole the wine, and they actually were able to take the wine out, which is crazy to me that they could get it up out of the tunnels. I've seen some of the World War II movies, read some of the stories of, when some of the Jews went through the tunnels, and other people, our American flyers, all these different people that hid out through tunnels, not just the French tunnels, but also different things in other countries and by the Vatican, all these different things. When you really think about people walking through these tunnels, they would have to be somewhat brave and somewhat daring and somewhat just desperate at the time, if it's during the liberation of France. And then other times for these thrill seekers that want to see these things, somewhat either crazy or a little bit brave, or I don't know what, because it's a very narrow corridor. It's not something for like the faint of heart. So there is only one confirmed death in the catacombs, and that was in 1793. The man Philibert Aspart was a doorkeeper that they think lost his way and somehow his light and died alone. Nobody knows how he died. They just found him laying there. He was found dead by a stairwell that led to an exit, and he would have been right there, and he would have been easy to easily to get out. He would have had a way to get out if he just walked a little further. Who knows if he had a heart attack? They didn't say how old he was. So there, maybe there's conflicting stories. I don't know, but I thought it was a little bit strange that this poor man died, and he was so close to getting out, and he probably was terrified. Just people who go down there normally, present day. I mean, it's a claustrophobia type of atmosphere. So can you imagine somebody who's down there by themselves and then loses their way or their light and they panic? I don't even want to think about it, because that's something like nightmares are made out of. The only identification markings used to confirm his identity was a hospital keyring and his jacket buttons. So who knows too? I mean, like, somebody could fake somebody's death. Somebody could kill somebody and put them down there. If you could go down there and steal wine and bring it up, why not commit a murder? I mean, these things sound far-fetched, but obviously these incidents are documented and they did happen. So at first, permission was granted to go down in the catacombs only a few times a year. Then it got out of hand, then thrill seekers, then many people coming in and out all times of the day. Then it becomes daily. Then the church, it goes back and forth, and the church completely shuts down the catacombs because it's out of respect for the dead, because these crazy thrill seekers are coming, which happens even present day. Then throughout the 1800s, the amount of visits changed so many times, various times, to the point where it also turned into the 1900s World's Fair Exposition. So that probably gave it tremendous publicity. Obviously, these aren't the only catacombs, the French catacombs, but this definitely, I think, probably makes an impression on people when they see it, because they think of, if they know the history of it, that it was due to the overcrowding of cemeteries in France, that they actually dug up and removed people's remains and then put it underground. It's just kind of crazy. Then in September of 2009, there was a vandalism incident and they were closed, but then reopened some months later. So it just goes to show you what are the possibilities and what could happen. So it sounds like there was some back and forth, and then in 2020 they had some COVID-19 guidelines where you had to wear masks. You don't have to wear masks anymore, but even down there you were underground, you were wearing masks. And can you imagine the claustrophobia of the people down there present day? Also, you won't really see any large buildings in these areas because of cave-ins. So the area where the catacombs are above ground, they're not going to be too heavy. There's not going to be anything too big. And it makes you wonder how the safety is just walking on them every day. Paris is a very, very old city. So of course the tight corridors, the dim lighting, being underground, the remains of so many dead obviously contribute to an eerie atmosphere, but also no doubt the story of the man who went missing. He died alone with no light, no way to figure out what happened to him. But then he wasn't discovered until like 11 or so years later, and it kind of adds to the macabre atmosphere of the whole story. So there also might be the fact that these remains were removed maybe against people's wishes. Maybe some people did not want their loved ones to be moved from one cemetery to the other, and to be put underground. Whether just because somebody's from a long time ago, and it might be genuinely your family, but they're from a long time ago, so it feels like, oh, that's like Aunt Tilly, great 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 Aunt Tilly. You still have a connection to your family, so you'd still want respect, and nobody wants to be forgotten, even though it doesn't matter to the people once they've already died. Their souls still exist. Nobody wants to be forgotten. People want you to remember to pray for them. And like I said, France is a Catholic country. So I don't know how the people of France reacted at that time period, but I know as somebody who's from present day, not from France, but from modern day, it's something that I think would bother me, and probably bother people in a way that they would at least be a little bit averse to the idea of having their loved ones' remains taken out of consecrated ground. And then I would assume that because France is a a Catholic country, I would assume that the priests consecrated perhaps the catacombs. I would hope. I don't know the whole story behind that, but I still feel like this is a very unusual story. And many people have claimed to have paranormal experiences and sightings, and if they did, I can see why, because there's so much dead around. The dead are reinterred from this place to this place. I mean, you could possibly, there have been so many stories of flooded cemeteries, etc., when they take the coffins back and all the different remains, and it's like sometimes they forget things. Sometimes people are lost, and when there's vandalism and then the tunnels can be shut down and you can't visit your loved ones, or the idea that something like that, somebody can tell you in a blink of an eye you can't go down there, but your loved ones are down there, even if it's just their remains. The whole idea that somebody has control over that. And I'm not saying anything bad either, because the church was the ones who tried to do the best that they could so that the remains were respectfully protected. That's why they, when there was vandalism, when there was this or that, they stopped people going down there. But there's only so much you can do, and people, I mean, everybody likes to know that the dead is, at least their remains are resting respectfully. Nobody wants to think that they're in like an underground cellar too. I mean, like, they do like to come to the cemetery to pay their respects. So you let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know, how would you react to this if you were from France, or another country, because they have the catacombs in Italy and other places. But how would you react to this this situation where your loved one's remains are being moved to from one cemetery to underground? And then how would you react to present day? Like, would you be one of those people who would go and visit the catacombs present day? It's claustrophobia, dim lighting, somebody died down there, and that's only the documented. I'm sure there's a lot of things that happen, at least during the World War II. So let me know in the comments. Please don't forget to like my videos. Please don't, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel, Remote Backroad Jungles, with a dash in between each word, and my link is www.youtube.com/@hiddenoasis-secret pathfinder, and join me next time.